Just a reminder that if you haven't seen the previous instalment of the Ident Review Extra, it can indeed still be viewed here on the channel, and in that previous instalment we took a look at Steam. And now, here on AMTV, time for the most recent instalment of the Ident Review Extra, and this time, get behind your desks, we're going to be doing some learning. The following programme is rated U. It is suitable for all audiences. Hello, and welcome to the Ident Review Extra, the spin-off show that takes a look at one individual ident each episode and gives it the review it deserves. And today we continue our marathon through the BBC2 idents of the 1990s. Today in our BBC2 journey, we go for a more educational perspective. By the mid-90s, to compete with the ever-expanding lineup of 24-hour satellite channels, the terrestrial channels, namely ITV and Channel 4, had very much gone down the same route. The BBC, in their first steps to go 24 hours, decided to move their BBC2 educational-based programming from the early mornings to its own strand to be broadcast throughout the night. This strand was dubbed The Learning Zone and debuted in 1995. And as such, a brand new ident was commissioned to represent the new strand. So let's give it a look.
A very good evening to you and a warm welcome to the BBC's all-night educational programmes, The Learning Zone.
Well, they were certainly going for the more educational route, weren't they? Right from the get-go, if you whiz your eyes around the screen throughout this sequence, you can see several things. An equation, marine life, DNA, plants, money, all various topics and areas that Learning Zone programs would cover. I've got to say, it does work well with all these things appearing. It doesn't feel too cluttered up, and still having the central two in the frame, a bit more pronounced overall, presents a smooth image to the viewer.
Hello and a very warm welcome to tonight's Learning Zone here on BBC2 educational programmes through the night.
The main problem I have with this sequence, however, can be broken down into two factors. First, the colour scheme. It's vaguely reminiscent of the aqua blue tones of the two we have become so familiar with, but it verges on being a bit more grey, and overall I think the sequence looks a little washed out, or dare I say it, a little dull. For an ident that is meant to be promoting educational programming, you would have thought they would have pulled out all the stops to make it as interesting as possible. The second factor I'm not keen on is the music. Whilst it is quite simple and laid back, again to promote education and to get people interested, I would have thought some upbeat or even more obnoxious music would have done a better job. I can see that they would have gone for the laid back music as this was a strand show late at night, but I think in terms of gaining interest, it just falls a little flat.
Next on BBC Focus, Film Education's monthly series examines James and the Giant Peach's journey to the big screen.
The Learning Zone would continue to be connected to BBC2 until late 1997, when after a major corporate rebrand, the strand would undergo a facelift. It would still air in the overnight hours, but now it would be a completely separate entity from BBC2, carrying no two branding, and almost looking like a channel of its own. Here's a little look at how this rebrand appeared.
A source of knowledge through the night, this is BBC Learning Zone.
Despite separating itself from the BBC2 branding after only 2 years, the Learning Zone actually lasted a surprisingly long time, all the way up until 2015 in fact. So after turning 20 years old, due to budgetary reasons, the BBC decided that it was time to take the Learning Zone off the airwaves. Overall, the Learning Zone ident is a strange oddity. Whilst this sequence does include the famous hallmark of the BBC2 branding, it really didn't stay that way for long. Most people remember the Learning Zone after its 1997 rebrand, when it was seen as its own separate thing, and to be honest, those newer idents are much stronger in my opinion. The debut ident does have its strengths, but ultimately I think it's one of the most forgetful sequences from the entire 1990s, for BBC2. And so we've come to the end, but before we go, the final words from our broadcaster. That was the Ident Review Extra. We hope you enjoyed, and that you tune in next time. Keep an eye on the Community tab and the Sunday Catch-Up for further news about this programme, as well as others here on AMTV. But until then, have a good week, and we hope that you'll join us again soon. Good night.